In the year 1935, American Airlines harbored a truly ambitious vision to introduce an aircraft that would afford its passengers the luxury of sleeping in actual, comfortable beds during flights spanning the vast distance from New York to Los Angeles. Their desire was not merely for slightly reclined seats or uninspired cabin arrangements, but for genuine pull-down berths, akin to those found in an opulent Pullman train car, elevated to an astonishing 10,000 feet above the earth. To bring this extraordinary concept to fruition, they extended an invitation to Donald Douglas, the renowned California-based aircraft manufacturer, who was already deeply immersed in the innovative development of all-metal aircraft designs. American Airlines presented him with a formidable request: 20 such sleeper planes. Douglas, with characteristic resolve, accepted the challenge, though his engineering team found themselves grappling with an immense undertaking. Crafting a commercial airliner that could simultaneously embody lavish comfort and remain financially viable was a task of such intricate difficulty that it could be likened to threading a needle amidst the chaos of a raging hurricane. The dedicated team immediately plunged into their work, and with remarkable speed, by December 17, 1935, precisely 32 years to the day after the Wright brothers' seminal first flight, the DST, or Douglas Sleeper Transport, majestically ascended from Cloverfield in Santa Monica. It was a marvel of aviation engineering, boasting a sleek, all-metal exterior, powered by twin engines, featuring a robust tailwheel, and ingeniously designed to accommodate either 14 sleeping berths for overnight journeys or 21 standard day seats in its more common DC-3 configuration. Airlines universally embraced this new aircraft with fervent enthusiasm, primarily because it represented the inaugural plane capable of generating substantial profits solely from passenger fares, thereby eliminating the previous reliance on supplementary mail contracts. The DC-3, with astonishing rapidity, became the very backbone of American civil aviation, reshaping the industry almost instantaneously. But here resided a truth that eluded foresight. This passenger aircraft, meticulously conceived for both passenger comfort and commercial profitability, possessed an inherent structural resilience designed to endure extraordinary duress. Its fuselage was engineered as a semi-monocoque structure, a sophisticated design where the metal skin itself bore significant stress loads, rather than depending exclusively on an internal framework. This ingenious construction rendered the aircraft remarkably lightweight, yet endowed it with astonishing strength, much like an aluminum beverage can that steadfastly resists crumpling under pressure. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment below about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The wings, a testament to thoughtful design, were notably thick, incorporating a high-lift airfoil configuration that empowered the aircraft to execute both takeoffs and landings on remarkably short runways. This characteristic was vitally important for navigating the rudimentary grass strips and uneven fields that frequently served as airports during the 1930s. Douglas engineers also wisely incorporated a broad center section between the wing spars, thereby creating an expansive cargo hold. This capacious area could effortlessly accommodate luggage, numerous mail sacks, or, as future circumstances would reveal, an astonishing array of items including jeeps, howitzers, and even wounded soldiers transported on stretchers. The landing gear, built with exceptional robustness, was specifically engineered to absorb the impact of jarring landings on unpaved runways, while the tailwheel configuration ensured remarkable stability on the ground, even when contending with challenging crosswinds. By the year 1939, an astounding 90% of the world's airline traffic was being carried by DC-3s. More than 400 of these magnificent aircraft were actively in service, forging vital connections between cities across America, Europe, and Asia. Pan American utilized them to inaugurate novel routes throughout Latin America, and KLM extended their reach to the distant Dutch East Indies. It was, without question, the first truly global airliner, and its advent democratized air travel, making it accessible not merely to the affluent elite but also to the burgeoning middle class. Then, the world was engulfed in the flames of war. Germany's invasion of Poland in September 1939 abruptly brought a stark realization. Conflicts were not solely won through the might of fighter planes and bombers. An urgent need emerged for transport aircraft capable of swiftly moving troops, provisions, and vital equipment. The U.S. Army Air Corps had been observing the DC-3 with keen interest for several years, and its capabilities were profoundly intriguing. This civilian marvel possessed the capacity to haul 3 tons of cargo, cruise at a respectable 160 miles per hour, and operate effectively from challenging, unpaved fields. While it had not been conceived for warfare, it inherently possessed all the essential attributes required of a military transport: unwavering reliability, operational simplicity, and formidable toughness. High-ranking military officials initiated urgent communications with Santa Monica. December 1941 irrevocably altered the global landscape. The Japanese assault on Pearl Harbor on the 7th thrust the United States into a two-ocean war, woefully unprepared with insufficient equipment. The Army Air Forces required transport planes immediately. Not in 6 months, not after a protracted development program, but at that very moment. They already knew the DC-3 was a proven performer. Consequently, rather than embarking on the arduous process of designing an entirely new aircraft from scratch, they made a straightforward yet pivotal decision: to militarize the existing DC-3. On paper, this transformation appeared deceptively simple. In reality, Douglas engineers were granted a mere 72 hours to convert a luxurious airliner into a robust cargo hauler capable of withstanding the rigors of combat conditions. The opulent sleeper berths were summarily stripped out. Gone were the sophisticated soundproofing panels, the plush passenger seats, and the convenient overhead bins designed for traveler luggage. In their place, Douglas installed reinforced aluminum floors, meticulously rated to manage concentrated loads, envision ammunition crates, hefty fuel drums, or a fully assembled motorcycle. They further augmented the aircraft with a massive cargo door on the port side, measuring an impressive 6 feet in both height and width, making it capacious enough to load a disassembled Jeep or a 75mm pack howitzer broken into its constituent pieces. This was far from a gentle modification. It involved cutting directly into the fuselage structure and then diligently reinforcing the edges with heavy frames to prevent any cracking under the immense stresses of military operation. The military also stipulated the inclusion of seating for paratroopers, accommodations for 28 men, fully equipped in their combat gear, positioned to face each other along the cabin walls on fold-down benches constructed from tubular aluminum and canvas webbing. These seats were not designed for comfort. Indeed, they were explicitly not intended to be. Their imperative was to be lightweight, exceptionally strong, and rapidly deployable. Above these paratrooper seats, Douglas integrated a robust steel cable anchor line, extending the entire length of the cabin ceiling. Paratroopers would securely attach their static lines to this cable, and upon their jump, the line would automatically deploy their parachutes. It was a brilliant embodiment of simplicity, yet it demanded precise engineering. This cable had to withstand the simultaneous pulling force of 28 men during a drop without tearing loose from the airframe. The floor, too, received significant enhancements, with tie-down rings strategically placed every few feet. Heavy steel loops securely bolted through the skin into the underlying structural framework. This allowed cargo to be firmly lashed down with chains or ropes, ensuring it remained immobile during periods of turbulence or aggressive maneuvers. The pilots were also afforded subtle yet crucial upgrades: more robust instrumentation, a superior compass, and astrodome hatches facilitating celestial navigation during extensive over-water flights. Additionally, the electrical system was upgraded from the civilian 12-volt setup to a more powerful 24-volt system, powering advanced radios and signal lights designed for communication with ground troops. The thoroughly redesigned aircraft received a new designation, the C-47 Skytrain. The C denoted its cargo-carrying purpose, and 47 was simply the next sequential number in the Air Force's inventory list. Notably, Douglas did not alter the engines, the wings, or the landing gear. There was simply no time for such extensive modifications, and frankly, no necessity. The existing civilian DC-3 structure was already significantly over-engineered by conventional airline standards, which rendered it perfectly suited for the rigorous demands and inherent abuse of military service. By January 1942, the first C-47s began rolling off the production line at the Long Beach plant. To meet the escalating demand, Douglas also activated a second factory in Oklahoma City. The Army initially placed an order for 965 planes, then subsequently increased it to 5,000, and continued to raise the numbers thereafter. Workers toiled tirelessly, around the clock, in shifts, and the factory floor resembled a scene of meticulously controlled chaos, wings being riveted into place, engines carefully lowered onto their mounts, and fuselages steadily progressing down the assembly line like a morbid procession of aluminum insects. Each plane required approximately 20,000 man-hours to complete, a figure that might seem substantial until one considers that Boeing's B-17 bomber demanded 3 times that amount. The C-47 was characterized by its rapid construction, economical operation, and an almost indestructible resilience. The very heart of the C-47 comprised a pair of Pratt & Whitney R-1830 twin Wasp engines, and comprehending the significance of these specific power plants is crucial to understanding the aircraft's unparalleled dominance. Each engine was a 14-cylinder, air-cooled radial design, meaning the cylinders were arranged in a circular formation around the crankshaft, much like the petals of a blossoming flower. This configuration offered considerable advantages. Air-cooled engines obviated the need for radiators, coolant lines, or pumps, which translated directly into fewer components prone to failure and a reduction in overall weight. In active combat zones, where a single bullet piercing a coolant line could critically disable a liquid-cooled engine, the Twin Wasp continued its reliable operation. Each engine generated a formidable 1,200 horsepower at takeoff, and while this output was not earth-shattering when compared to dedicated fighter planes, it was precisely the optimal amount for a transport aircraft. Excessive power would result in wasted fuel, while insufficient power would prevent the aircraft from lifting a full load from a short jungle strip. The Twin Wasp perfectly struck this delicate balance. However, it was in this aspect that Douglas engineers truly distinguished themselves. They did not merely bolt these engines onto the wings and consider their task complete. They meticulously designed engine mounts specifically engineered to absorb vibration, recognizing that radial engines characteristically shook with the intensity of jackhammers. These mounts incorporated rubber isolators that allowed the engine to subtly oscillate without transmitting every tremor directly into the airframe. This innovative solution prevented rivets from loosening and averted metal fatigue cracks that would otherwise have grounded the aircraft after merely a few hundred hours of operation. They also integrated full feathering propellers, a sophisticated feature originally adapted from bomber aircraft. If one engine were to fail, the pilot possessed the ability to rotate the blades of the defunct propeller edge-on into the wind, thereby eliminating aerodynamic drag. Consequently, the C-47 could continue to fly on a single engine, not with optimal performance or speed, but it would manage to limp home rather than plummeting from the sky. Pilots greatly valued this capability, as engine failures were a common occurrence over hostile territory, and single-engine flying saved hundreds of crews. The fuel system represented yet another masterpiece of practical engineering. The C-47 carried a substantial 804 gallons of aviation gasoline, distributed among 4 tanks, 2 strategically located in the wings and 2 within the center section. Gravity naturally fed fuel from the wing tanks to the engines, ensuring that even if the electric fuel pumps failed, the engines would continue to operate as long as there was fuel remaining in the tanks. For extended long-range missions, ground crews could secure auxiliary fuel tanks within the cargo cabin, thereby extending the aircraft's range from 1,600 miles to an impressive over 3,000 miles. This modification transformed the C-47 into a truly transoceanic transport, capable of island hopping across the vast Pacific or undertaking the challenging South Atlantic route from Brazil to West Africa. The aircraft consumed approximately 100 gallons per hour at cruise speed, a seemingly thirsty rate until one considers its capacity to haul 3 tons of cargo simultaneously. Its fuel efficiency per ton-mile surpassed that of almost any truck convoy and offered an infinitely faster mode of transportation. The C-47, an aircraft capable of traversing distances far greater and with significantly more speed than virtually any ground-based truck convoy, presented an astonishing feat of engineering. A crucial, yet often overlooked, element of its ingenious design was its exceptionally robust cargo floor. Douglas engineers meticulously re-engineered the original DC-3 floor, integrating formidable longitudinal beams that ran the entire length of the fuselage, complemented by sturdy cross-members positioned at regular intervals. This enhancement bestowed upon the floor an impressive capacity to bear 6,000 pounds of concentrated cargo, enabling, for instance, the secure stacking of heavy ammunition crates in a confined space without compromising the structural integrity of the airframe. Furthermore, the floor featured a subtle upward curve in its center, a thoughtful detail ensuring that any accumulated water or mud would naturally drain towards the door, preventing pooling within the cabin and averting potential maintenance issues. These seemingly minor design decisions collectively transformed the aircraft from a mere concept into a highly functional and remarkably resilient workhorse. The floor's surface was covered with durable, non-slip plywood panels, which ground crews could expediently replace within an hour if they sustained damage. This commitment to straightforward, uncomplicated yet impeccably executed design principles was a hallmark of the C-47. When one considers the cumulative effect of its meticulously engineered components, including its powerful engines, reliable fuel system, reinforced floor, and robust structural framework, the resulting aircraft was remarkably resilient and forgiving, almost impervious to mishandling. In the relentless crucible of wartime operations, such inherent durability and operational simplicity held a value that far surpassed mere raw performance metrics. We invite you to stay with us and watch the end of this video. Your like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. We would also love to hear from you in the comments section. Tell us where you are from and share your thoughts on the compelling topic of this video. The global community held its collective breath on June 6, 1944, as Operation Overlord, the monumental Allied invasion commenced its unfolding drama across the Norman coastline. Yet, hours prior to the first landing craft making contact with the beaches, the true genesis of this pivotal offensive materialized in the nocturnal skies above France. At precisely 12:15 a.m., a formidable armada of 822 C-47s ascended from various airfields scattered across southern England, their fuselages laden with precious human cargo. These aircraft were densely packed with American paratroopers, drawn from the distinguished 82nd and 101st Airborne Divisions. Each plane accommodated between 18 and 20 fully equipped troopers, individuals burdened with approximately 80 pounds of essential gear, including weaponry, ammunition, and reserve parachutes. The cabin environment was inherently restrictive, shrouded in darkness, and permeated by the distinct odors of perspiration, aviation oil, and often vomit, a testament to the fact that a significant portion of these brave men were suffering from air sickness exacerbated by the turbulent flight conditions. The pilots navigated their aircraft in meticulously organized, tight formations known as serials, typically comprising 9-plane V-formation stacked sequentially, relying on the rudimentary methods of dead reckoning and intermittent radio beacons. This cautious approach was necessitated by the omnipresent threat of German radar, which rendered any form of electronic navigation a perilous endeavor. Their journey across the English Channel unfolded at a relatively low altitude of 1,500 feet, a height at which the resonant thrum of their engines echoed distinctly off the water's surface. The operational blueprint, while elegant in its theoretical articulation, posited a precise strategy to deploy 13,000 paratroopers inland, strategically positioned behind Utah Beach. Their critical objectives included the swift securing of vital bridges, the neutralization of enemy artillery emplacements, and the effective disruption of German reinforcement movements. The Pathfinders, an elite vanguard, initiated the jump at 12:15 a.m., tasked with the crucial mission of establishing radar beacons and illuminating markers to delineate the designated drop zones. Subsequently, the main waves of aircraft were to follow, each serial meticulously timed to arrive at predetermined intervals, ensuring a coordinated and impactful deployment. However, the unforgiving reality of warfare rarely conforms to meticulously crafted plans. As the C-47s neared the French coastline, the silence of the night was shattered by the ferocious barrage of German anti-aircraft guns. Brilliant streaks of tracer rounds arced through the oppressive darkness, while 80mm flak shells detonated in incandescent orange fireballs. Suddenly, pilots found themselves engaged in desperate evasive maneuvers, executing sharp dives, rapid climbs, and violent twists to elude the deadly torrent of enemy fire. The meticulously maintained tight formation swiftly disintegrated under the onslaught. Some pilots, acutely concerned about the potential for propeller blast injuries to the jumpers, deliberately reduced their airspeed to a mere 90 miles per hour. Conversely, others aggressively advanced their throttles to 150 miles per hour, desperately seeking to escape the lethal flak. The immediate consequence was an escalating state of disarray. Paratroopers plunged into the inky blackness, utterly disoriented and without any clear understanding of their precise location. Tragically, some descended into waterlogged fields, succumbing to drowning under the immense weight of their equipment. Others found themselves entangled in trees, stranded on rooftops, or even landing directly amidst fortified German positions. Yet, a remarkable characteristic of the C-47 emerged. Despite the intense punishment, the aircraft steadfastly continued their mission. Planes absorbed direct hits, shrapnel tore through their aluminum skins, hydraulic lines ruptured, and engines ignited in flames. Nevertheless, the overwhelming majority of these resilient aircraft managed to limp back to their bases in England. Returning crews recounted harrowing tales of bullet-riddled wings, tail sections that were half obliterated, and control cables hanging precariously by mere threads. One particular C-47 returned with an astounding 108 bullet holes piercing its fuselage, both engines barely functioning. Remarkably, this battered aircraft landed safely, underwent overnight repairs, and was astonishingly airborne again the very next day. Ironically, the widespread dispersion of the paratroopers inadvertently worked to the Allies' advantage. German commanders, receiving fragmented reports of paratroopers landing seemingly everywhere, behind every hedge and in every village, were plunged into a state of panic, erroneously believing the invasion force to be far larger and more pervasive than it actually was. Amidst the darkness and confusion, small, resilient groups of American soldiers began to coalesce, utilizing distinctive toy crickets as a clandestine means of identification, and immediately commenced engaging their assigned objectives. By the first light of dawn, despite the chaotic and scattered drops, the paratroopers had successfully seized crucial bridges and strategic roads, establishing vital footholds. The C-47s returned to the skies at daylight on June 6, this time undertaking a different, yet equally critical role, towing Waco gliders. These gliders were laden with essential supplies, including jeeps, anti-tank guns, and additional troops. The gliders themselves were notoriously flimsy, essentially plywood boxes, and landing them in the often small, irregular French fields proved to be a death sentence for many occupants. However, the C-47 tugs valiantly delivered them to their destinations. Over 500 gliders touched down on D-Day, effectively delivering the artillery and vehicles that the paratroopers, burdened with their personal gear, could not possibly carry. The dedicated C-47 crews flew multiple arduous missions throughout that day, executing troop drops, towing gliders, and, on their return flights, evacuating the wounded. Pilots were utterly exhausted, navigators hoarse from continuously shouting coordinates, and every aircraft was permeated by the acrid sense of cordite and blood. Despite the immense challenges and sacrifices, the mission achieved its objectives. Normandy's drop zones were transformed into critical footholds, and these footholds ultimately became the springboard for the breakout that led to the liberation of France. General Dwight D. Eisenhower himself later emphatically stated that victory in the war would have been unattainable without the C-47. He emphasized that it was not the formidable fighters or the powerful bombers, but rather the unassuming, unarmed transport aircraft, performing the essential dirty work that proved indispensable. The C-47's tireless service did not conclude with the triumph of Normandy. 10 months subsequent, on March 24, 1945, it once again assumed a prominent role, this time for Operation Varsity, a massive airborne assault across the Rhine River aimed at penetrating Germany's industrial heartland. On this occasion, the meticulous planners had assimilated the hard-won lessons from D-Day's chaotic execution. There were to be no perilous night drops, nor any scattered formations. Over 900 C-47s, alongside their British counterparts, took to the skies in broad daylight at precisely 10 a.m., flying with a precision akin to a parade ground display. They successfully dropped an astonishing 17,000 British and American paratroopers in less than 2 hours, an unparalleled achievement, marking the most concentrated airborne assault in the annals of history. The German flak, however, was devastatingly effective due to the clear visibility afforded by daylight, which provided gunners with unmistakable targets. A tragic 53 C-47s were shot down over the drop zones, spiraling in flames into the German countryside. An additional 400 returned to base, so severely damaged that they were either written off as irreparable or necessitated weeks of extensive repairs. Nevertheless, the mission was a resounding success. Paratroopers landed cohesively, organized, and immediately prepared for engagement. They swiftly seized the crucial bridgeheads, thereby enabling ground forces to pour across the Rhine. The C-47 had once again unequivocally demonstrated its extraordinary capacity to absorb punishment that would utterly obliterate lesser aircraft designs, yet still reliably deliver its vital payload. Concurrently, approximately 6,000 meters away, across the vast expanse of the Pacific, C-47s were engaged in a fundamentally different kind of conflict. Jungle airstrips carved out of the dense rainforests of New Guinea, the Philippines, and Burma became indispensable lifelines for troops isolated from conventional naval supply routes. These were not sophisticated airfields. Rather, they were rudimentary clearings, often surfaced with pure steel planking or crushed coral, barely 2,000 feet in length, and frequently flanked by imposing trees at both ends. Yet, the C-47 remained unfazed. Its broad landing gear efficiently distributed weight across the soft, uneven ground, and its tailrigger configuration meant the tailwheel served as an effective braking mechanism during rollout. Pilots routinely executed landings with one engine feathered, skillfully evading Japanese fighters on their approach, swiftly offloaded cargo, loaded wounded personnel, and took off again with remarkable speed, often before enemy artillery could accurately zero in on their positions. In the challenging terrain of Burma, C-47s provided crucial logistical support to the Chindits, British long-range penetration units operating deep within Japanese lines, often 200 meters behind enemy positions. In this unforgiving environment, devoid of roads or navigable rivers, the jungle reigned supreme. The intrepid C-47 crews flew over the majestic Himalayas, along the southern edge of the perilous route famously known as the Hump. They traversed daunting 16,000-foot mountain passes where powerful updrafts and downdrafts violently buffeted their aircraft, tossing them around like toys. They transported vital cargo, including ammunition, food, medical supplies, and even live mules. Yes, live mules, destined to serve as pack animals for the Chindits. The daunting task of loading a terrified mule into the C-47's cargo bay was a unique nightmare in itself, yet the crews consistently managed to accomplish it. They also undertook the critical mission of evacuating the wounded, sometimes ingeniously packing 30 stretchers inside the cabin by stacking them 3 high along the walls. The cabin effectively transformed into a flying field hospital, with medics working tirelessly by flashlight as the plane bucked violently through tumultuous monsoon storms. Perhaps the most renowned Pacific mission was the desperate supply run to Bataan in early 1942, preceding the eventual fall of the Philippines. C-47s, flying from distant Australia, made valiant attempts to breach formidable Japanese air patrols, endeavoring to drop essential food and ammunition to the beleaguered American and Filipino forces trapped on the peninsula. Most of these brave attempts did not succeed. Japanese Zeros relentlessly shot them down or forced them to retreat. However, a courageous handful managed to slip through under the cover of darkness, flying at way-top height to evade enemy radar, and successfully drop supplies that sustained the defenders for a few precious additional weeks. It was universally acknowledged as a suicide mission, yet the crews, with unwavering resolve, volunteered anyway. Later, following General MacArthur's triumphant retaking of the Philippines, C-47s became the indispensable backbone of the island-hopping logistics strategy. They leapfrogged from one newly captured airstrip to the next, delivering an astonishing array of items, ranging from vital freshwater to propaganda leaflets. On Okinawa, they routinely landed under intense artillery fire, their engines running, cargo doors already open, as ground crews frantically hurled supplies out while the aircraft was still in motion. The average turnaround time for these critical operations was an astonishing 4 minutes. This extraordinary level of efficiency was not solely attributable to the aircraft itself. It stemmed fundamentally from the elegant simplicity of its design, which empowered mechanics to resolve issues with basic tools and enabled cargo handlers to work with unparalleled speed. The C-47 did not demand specialized equipment or pristine operating conditions. It simply performed its duties, everywhere, every single time. With the cessation of hostilities in August 1945, the world found itself suddenly inundated with a vast surplus of C-47s. Thousands of these venerable aircraft sat on airfields spanning from England to the Philippines, awaiting either the scrap yard or sale at bargain prices. While most military aircraft typically recede into obscurity after their wars conclude, the C-47 was destined for a remarkable second act, one that proved almost as dramatic and impactful as its initial, wartime chapter. The ensuing situation was nearly as captivating as the initial crisis. In June 1948, the Soviet Union imposed a complete blockade on West Berlin, effectively severing all overland routes by road and rail. This strategic maneuver was an attempt to exert pressure, hoping to compel the city's inhabitants into capitulation through starvation, and thereby force the Western Allied powers to withdraw. Approximately 2 million Berliners found themselves isolated within the western sectors, facing a dire situation with only an estimated 36 days' worth of food provisions. The sheer volume of essential supplies required to sustain the metropolis was immense, demanding 4,500 tons daily, encompassing everything from coal for heating and electricity generation, to flour for baking bread, vital medicines, and necessary clothing. The notion of supplying an entire urban center exclusively by air appeared to be an insurmountable challenge, a feat unprecedented in history. Yet, the Allies had no other recourse. Consequently, they reactivated their surplus C-47 aircraft from wartime inventories and initiated aerial operations. Operation Vittles, the designation given by the Americans, commenced on June 26, 1948, while the British referred to their involvement as Operation Playfair. Initially, the undertaking was characterized by a certain degree of disarray, with C-47s hastily transporting whatever provisions could be gathered. These aircraft would then land at Tempelhof Airport, situated centrally within Berlin, where their cargo was manually offloaded before they promptly departed for their return flights. Each aircraft possessed a carrying capacity of approximately 2.5 tons per journey, necessitating nearly 2,000 flights daily to adequately address the city's critical needs. This translated into an astonishing operational tempo of one aircraft landing every 90 seconds, a relentless schedule maintained around the clock, irrespective of prevailing weather conditions. The logistical complexities involved were truly staggering and pushed the boundaries of what was considered achievable. We invite you to stay with us and watch the conclusion of this video. We would be immensely grateful for your like and subscription. Please also consider leaving a comment below, sharing your place of origin, and your thoughts on the topic discussed in the video. On the ground, dedicated crews meticulously developed and refined an efficient system. The instant a C-47 touched down on the runway, it swiftly taxied to a designated unloading zone. There, a multitude of German workers would immediately swarm the aircraft, working with incredible speed and precision. They were allotted a mere 8 minutes to unload the diverse cargo: sacks of coal, bags of flour, crates of powdered milk, and various other vital provisions, before the aircraft was compelled to take off again, clearing the runway for the next inbound flight. In the unfortunate event of a mechanical failure, the disabled plane was unceremoniously pushed off the runway using a bulldozer, with repairs deferred until a later, less critical moment. There was simply no allowance for any delays or deviations from this rigorous schedule. The C-47s navigated through 3 distinct air corridors, extending from West Germany into Berlin, each corridor a precise 20 meters in width and layered vertically with specific altitude assignments. Aircraft maintained flight levels at 5,000, 6,000, and 7,000 feet, meticulously separated by time intervals calculated with extreme precision down to the very second. Air traffic controllers orchestrated a complex, 3-dimensional aerial ballet, a feat of coordination that would undoubtedly present a formidable challenge and perhaps even induce apprehension in contemporary logistics specialists. The onset of winter exacerbated an already precarious situation. Berlin in December 1948 was gripped by freezing temperatures, and the city's power plants were rapidly depleting their coal reserves. Consequently, the C-47's primary mission shifted to almost exclusively transporting coal. This material was not only dirty and heavy, but also highly abrasive, causing significant wear and tear to the aircraft's cargo floors and perpetually filling the cabin with a pervasive black dust. Crews resorted to shoveling coal directly out of the planes between flights, as there was insufficient time for proper sweeping. The aircrews were utterly exhausted, often completing 2 or 3 round trips daily, grabbing sleep in short shifts, and subsisting on cold rations. The aircraft themselves were enduring considerable strain. The incessant flying regime caused engines to wear out at an accelerated rate, far exceeding anything experienced during peacetime operations. Maintenance crews worked grueling 24-hour shifts, tirelessly replacing cylinders, meticulously patching hydraulic leaks, and swapping out propellers that had become bent or damaged from frequent, hard landings. By the spring of 1949, however, the airlift had been transformed into an exceptionally well-oiled and highly efficient operation. The Allies augmented their fleet with larger C-54 Skymasters, yet the venerable C-47 continued to play a pivotal role. The C-47 steadfastly remained the primary workhorse, undertaking the vast majority of the missions. A remarkable achievement occurred on Easter Sunday, April 16, 1949, when the airlift established an extraordinary record. 12,941 tons of supplies were delivered within a 24-hour period, across nearly 1,400 individual flights. Faced with this undeniable demonstration of Allied resolve, Stalin ultimately conceded that his strategy to break their will was failing. Consequently, on May 12, 1949, he lifted the blockade. Nevertheless, the airlift prudently continued until September, solely to ensure the replenishment and stabilization of Berlin's vital reserves. By its conclusion, the C-47s had collectively flown over 100,000 sorties, successfully delivering an astounding 2.3 million tons of essential supplies. Crucially, not a single Berliner succumbed to starvation. The C-47 unequivocally demonstrated its capacity to sustain life under seemingly impossible conditions during peacetime, echoing its wartime performance. The very aircraft that had once deployed paratroopers into Normandy were now reliably dropping coal into a blockaded city, exhibiting the same robust dependability. The profound influence of the C-47 transcended American national boundaries, spreading globally with the impact of a pervasive phenomenon. Nations worldwide swiftly recognized the indispensable utility of this aircraft. The British, for instance, acquired over 2,000 C-47s through the Lend-Lease program during the Second World War and developed a deep appreciation for their capabilities. They subsequently rechristened the aircraft as the Dakota, a moniker often believed to have originated from the military designation Douglas Aircraft Company Transport Aircraft. This name endured, and even today, British pilots continue to refer to it as the Dakota with a palpable sense of reverence. The Royal Air Force deployed Dakotas extensively across various theaters, including North Africa, Italy, and Burma, and later utilized them in Malaya during their campaign against communist insurgents operating in the jungle. The aircraft's unparalleled ability to deliver supplies to remote outposts nestled deep within the rainforest proved instrumental in making counterinsurgency operations feasible. Without the Dakota, it is highly probable that the British would have lost control of Malaya. France, too, received hundreds of Dakotas in the aftermath of the war and immediately pressed them into service in Indochina, where they were tasked with supplying isolated garrisons engaged in combat against the Viet Minh. One of the most historically significant missions occurred at Dien Bien Phu in 1954, where French Dakotas valiantly airlifted critical supplies and paratroopers into a valley that was entirely encircled by enemy forces. Although the base ultimately fell, the Dakotas continued to fly until the very last possible moment, their crews acutely aware that they were likely flying into either capture or certain death. The Soviet narrative concerning this aircraft is particularly extraordinary. As early as 1936, even before the outbreak of the Second World War, the Soviets secured a license to domestically manufacture DC-3s. They meticulously reverse-engineered the design, painstakingly converting all imperial measurements to the metric system, and subsequently commenced production of an almost identical clone, which they designated the Lisanovly II. The primary distinction was the addition of a dorsal gun turret, a modification reflecting Soviet military doctrine that presumed every transport aircraft would inevitably face attacks from enemy fighters. By the time Germany launched its invasion in 1941, Soviet factories were efficiently mass-producing Li-2s, ultimately constructing more than 6,000 units by the war's conclusion. The Li-2 performed every function attributed to the C-47. It supplied partisan groups operating behind German lines, evacuated wounded personnel from the brutal siege of Stalingrad, and even served as a night bomber, dropping small munitions on German positions. Following the war, the Soviets exported Li-2s to every communist nation globally. China acquired them, North Korea utilized them during the Korean War, and various Eastern European countries continued to operate them for several decades. There is a peculiar irony in the fact that a Soviet-built clone of an American capitalist airliner became the fundamental backbone of communist military logistics, yet this is precisely what transpired. Numerous smaller nations adopted the C-47 due to its affordability, inherent simplicity, and widespread availability. In the aftermath of World War II, a surplus C-47 could be acquired for a price comparable to that of a high-quality automobile, and its operation did not necessitate a specialized team of engineers. A mechanic proficient in repairing a tractor could readily maintain a C-47. Consequently, countries such as Greece, Turkey, Israel, and South Africa structured their nascent air forces around this versatile aircraft type. Israel employed C-47s during the 1948 War of Independence to airlift essential supplies past Arab blockades, and even ingeniously converted a few into improvised bombers by rolling explosives out of the cargo door. While crude, this method proved effective. South Africa deployed C-47s in the border war, facilitating the insertion of troops into Angola and Mozambique. The Argentine Air Force remarkably utilized them during the Falklands War in 1982. Indeed, nearly 5 decades after its initial design debut, these aircraft were still actively flying combat missions. One Argentine C-47 was tragically shot down by a British Sea Harrier, an incident that likely marks the sole instance of a 1930s transport aircraft being destroyed by a jet fighter. By the 1990s, over 60 nations had, at some point, operated C-47s or Dakotas, cementing its status as one of the most extensively used aircraft in aviation history. A few examples continue to operate today, primarily with small cargo companies in Africa and South America, transporting freight to remote locations where paved runways remain a rare luxury. There are C-47s manufactured in 1943 that have accumulated over 90,000 flight hours, an equivalent to flying continuously for more than a decade. The airframe simply refuses to be retired. Upon entering any contemporary military transport aircraft, be it a C-130 Hercules, an A-400M Atlas, or even the colossal C-17 Globemaster, the indelible genetic legacy of the C-47 is strikingly evident. The distinctive rear cargo ramp that lowers for loading? That is a direct evolution of the C-47 side cargo door philosophy, prioritizing rapid loading and unloading without the need for specialized equipment. The characteristic webbing seats lining the fuselage walls, where troops sit facing one another. These are direct descendants of the tubular aluminum benches that Douglas installed in 1942. The robust tie-down rings embedded in the floor, the static line cables utilized by paratroopers, and the fundamental emphasis on operating from austere, unpaved fields. Every modern military transport inherits these essential features because the C-47 irrefutably demonstrated their efficacy. The entire doctrine of tactical airlift for the U.S. Air Force, the groundbreaking concept that ground forces could be sustained deep within enemy territory solely through aerial supply, was formulated during World War II, with C-47 serving as the crucial test platform. Prior to the C-47, it was widely believed that conducting a war without secure ground-based supply lines was an impossibility. The C-47 rendered that long-held belief obsolete. The engineering wisdom derived from the C-47 extended even further. Douglas unequivocally demonstrated that cutting-edge technology was not a prerequisite for developing a weapon capable of securing victory in war. Instead, the essential ingredients were reliability, simplicity, and ease of manufacturing. The C-47 incorporated readily available, off-the-shelf engines, employed conventional aluminum construction techniques, and utilized mechanical systems that were straightforward enough for even a high-school shop class to comprehend. There were no exotic materials, no experimental designs, and no components that demanded months of lead time for production. This pragmatic design philosophy profoundly influenced post-war military strategic thinking. When Lockheed embarked on the design of the C-130 Hercules in the 1950s, they deliberately emulated the C-47's foundational approach: robust construction, inherent simplicity, and maintainability in the field using only basic tools. The C-130 subsequently emerged as the C-47's spiritual successor, and it remains in production today, 70 years later, for precisely the same enduring reasons that ensured the C-47's longevity. It simply performs its intended function exceptionally well. The C-47's enduring operational capability became legendary. It simply possessed an unwavering functionality that defied the passage of time. To this very day, contemporary logistics officers meticulously examine the intricate orchestration of the Berlin airlift, recognizing it as the exemplary benchmark for all sustained aerial resupply missions. The sophisticated air traffic management protocols, the rigorous upkeep regimens, and the precise coordination strategies meticulously developed in 1948, utilizing these very C-47 aircraft, subsequently established the definitive template for every significant airlift operation that has followed. From the challenging logistical demands of Vietnam to the complex theaters of Iraq and Afghanistan, these pioneering methods, born out of necessity and brilliant improvisation, continue to inform and guide modern military and humanitarian aerial supply efforts, underscoring the foundational impact of the C-47's early successes. However, the profound influence of the C-47 transcended mere military utility. It fundamentally recalibrated global perspectives on transportation. Prior to the advent of the DC-3 and its robust military offspring, air travel was largely perceived as an unfamiliar and precarious luxury, accessible only to a select few. Yet, in the aftermath of World War II, thousands of surplus C-47s deluged the commercial sector, swiftly transforming into the stalwarts of nascent airlines, particularly across developing nations. These versatile aircraft forged vital aerial arteries across vast expanses of Africa, South America, and Asia, effectively connecting remote regions that previously lacked any substantial road or rail infrastructure. The C-47 demonstrated unequivocally that aviation could be robust, economical, and profoundly trustworthy, rather than merely an exclusive plaything for the affluent. This crucial psychological shift was immensely significant, serving as a powerful catalyst for widespread adoption. It convinced governments and businesses alike to invest heavily in aviation infrastructure, an impetus that ultimately propelled the world into the jet age and fostered the intricate web of modern global connectivity we experience today. In a very real and tangible sense, the C-47 stands as the direct progenitor of the sophisticated Boeing 737 and Airbus A320 airliners that seamlessly link the continents and cultures of our contemporary world. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. There is an inherent artistry in the journey of an aircraft initially conceived to transport luxurious slumberers that ultimately transformed into the pivotal instrument of victory in a global conflict and subsequently played a crucial role in rebuilding peace. The visionary engineers at Douglas in 1935, when designing their elegant sleeper transport, could not have possibly foreseen that their creation would one day deploy paratroopers into the heart of France, provision resistance fighters in the dense jungles of Burma, succor a besieged metropolis, and still maintain an enduring operational lifespan some 90 years later. Their approach was simply to construct the finest aircraft they could with the technology available at the time. As events unfolded, it became abundantly clear that meticulous craftsmanship, or good enough done right, often outperforms theoretical sophistication and cutting-edge novelty almost every time. The C-47 did not secure triumph in the war because it boasted the fastest speeds or the most advanced systems. Rather, its success stemmed from its unparalleled resilience. It consistently arrived, diligently performed its duties, absorbed significant punishment, and steadfastly returned for more, day after day, mission after mission, year after year. That, ultimately, constitutes its profound legacy, not merely an airplane, but a foundational principle of engineering that champions unwavering dependability over fleeting brilliance, ingenious simplicity over convoluted complexity, and demonstrated efficacy over unproven novelty. The C-47 Skytrain imparted an indelible instruction to the world. Sometimes, the most superior tool is the one characterized by its resilient refusal to falter. And that invaluable lesson still resounds powerfully through the design and operation of every cargo plane soaring through the skies today, shaping the very essence of modern aerial freight carriers.